panel discussion, Water Rivalry on the Nile, and it's held on the occasion of the exhibition of the Eternal River in the Photography Gallery, which will be inaugurated on Wednesday. It's a photography exhibition. My name is Ola Saif, and I'm the curator of the photography collections at the Rare Books and Special Collections Library. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Hani Sewilam and Dr. Doris Jones in today's panel. I'll give you a quick read you a quick bio about our great panelists today. Dr. Hani Sewilam has a very rich CV. If I read it, we will spend the whole session, but I'll read you a few lines. He's both the founding director of the Center for Applied Research on the Environment and Sustainability at AUC, and the director of UNESCO Chair in the Hydrological Changes and Water Resources Management at the RWTH Aachen University in Germany. He's a professor of water resources and sustainable development. He coordinated capacity building programs at the United Nations water projects between 2009 and 2011. He has more than 25 years of academic and professional experience in the fields of sustainable development, water resources management, water energy food nexus, desalination, and capacity building. He authored many peer-reviewed scientific papers and book chapters, and he's a consultant to many reputable international organizations. Welcome, Dr. Sewilam. And for Dr. Doris Jones, who is a full-time faculty member in the Department of Rhetoric and Composition. She's working to develop an archival literacy educational program at AUC. She has taught a number of projects utilizing artifacts from the Rare Books and Special Collections Library and other cultural organizations in the United States. In her classes, she fosters a learning environment in which students are immersed in innovative discussions. She utilizes case studies, visuals, place-based learning, and interdisciplinary curricula. Lately, Jones has focused a critical lens on the Nile River. And as we all know, we are in a time where there are diplomacy challenges. However, we would like to gear today's session towards the educational pedagogical channel, given we're an educational institution. So today's session will go as follows. Dr. Sewilam will start with a presentation. Then Doris will follow with another 10-minute presentation, and then we will go on to the discussion and questions and answers. So we welcome you, Dr. Sewilam and Doris, and the floor is yours, Dr. Sewilam.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ola, for this introduction, and welcome to everyone in the webinar. And I hope we will be able to add to your knowledge whatever something new about water. As it was said, I'm Hani Sewilam, and today's topic is about, let us start with water. I need to tell you a little bit about what we eat, what we drink, so that you feel the significance and the importance of water, but not only the existence of water, the quantity of water we consume, just to get the feeling about the challenges we are facing, and also to know what's your role and my role and the role of everyone who is consuming water, either in Egypt or any location or any other place. So the way we measure our consumption, we measure it by what we call the water footprint. So we need to understand, of course, you are familiar with the carbon footprint or CO2 footprint, but there is also something called water footprint. And water footprint is the amount of water that you consume to produce a certain product. And we are talking about the amount that is not consuming to prepare the coffee, but the amount of water you consume to grow the coffee somewhere else in Africa or in other country, and then you harvest, you process it. So the water needed in the entire process, from planting it up to harvesting and cooking, and even the water you add in the kitchen in order to prepare the coffee. So imagine the amount of water used for this small cup of coffee, we are talking about 140 liters of water. So if you know the one bottle of 1 liter, you need 140 of this to prepare this very little amount of coffee. And if we speak about tea, tea is more, let me say, green than coffee. So with tea, we are speaking about 35 liters of water. And also for our products, when we speak about fish, for 1 kilogram of fish, we need 25,000 liters of water per kilogram to produce this amount of fish that we might consume just for having lunch. So it's not about your consumption only, the direct consumption from the water tap for shower or for cooking, but there is a huge amount of water that we consume to prepare you this food that you have to prepare it inside your house. I'm taking Egypt here as an example. The water share per capita is the amount of water available in the country divided by the number of population. So in 1962, your water share here in Egypt and my water share was 2,000. Here we are not speaking about liter, we are speaking about cubic meter per capita per year. And in 1967, the water share was less. Today, we are speaking about water share per capita of a little bit more than 500 cubic meter per capita. The water poverty line is 1,000 cubic meter per capita per year. So we, starting from beginning the 90s, we are below the water poverty line. In 2022, we are getting very close to the to the absolute scarcity, which is 500 cubic meter per capita per year. And in 2027, we will be having only 50% of the amount of water we need, which means now there is a gap. And this green area that you see here is the difference between the water available inside Egypt and what you are expecting here, at least the water poverty line. So the government has always to find solution from where we cover this gap, this green area that today it's almost 440 cubic meter for each person, which means every baby is going to be born today. We have to prepare for him or her 1,000 cubic meter of water. And today for the people living on the Egyptian ground, they have almost 50% deficit of their water. Yani, if you want to be accurate, it's 44% deficit of their required water to reach only the water poverty line. And that's why you hear every day about canal lining, you hear about water treatment stations, you hear about desalination projects. So you might heard about water projects in the past 5-6 years, more than what you have heard ever before this period, because of what I'm showing you on the screen. So now our main source of water, which is 97% of the water coming to Egypt, which is already not enough, as you have seen in the previous slides, is coming from the Nile Basin countries. And the Nile Basin countries are 11 countries that you see here on the screen, that they have to share the Nile together, and they have to work together in order to have always a win-win type of collaboration between them, and how they can deal with the water challenge. And always I say the water is overlapping with other topics that you have to consider, at least from the technical point of view, because as an engineer, I really don't want to go into politics, but I'm speaking from the engineering point of view. You need to study the water not in isolation from the energy, and you cannot study the energy in isolation from the food, because whoever is building a project, Upper Nile, is going to affect your water at the end, because Egypt is the country in the last country in the system. So whoever is going to build any project or construct or abstract water is going to affect the amount of water that's already has already, let me say, exceeded or reaching almost 50% of the scarcity in the country. So you need to see how this water is affected by other factors. For example, if any country in the upstream side of the river, Sudan or any other country, or Ethiopia or any country of the Upper Nile is building a project, an agriculture project to produce food. So here you can see there is a relation between water and food, and you can't produce food without water. If any of these countries is trying to build a construction like a dam, for example, to generate hydropower, so there is a relation between hydropower or energy and water. So you see here this water energy food, what we call the energy food nexus, has to be considered as one unit. So we have to see these three factors together. We have to understand the interrelationship between water, energy, the interrelationship between water and food, and also this arrow, you should draw it in the other direction. So food for energy, for example, people are growing food and using maize today or corn for producing biodiesel and biofuel. So if this is really the right approach, this is something that we have to consider. That's why these interrelationships between water, energy, and food, we have to understand them. So speaking of the Nile Basin, you can see here, this is the projection of electricity generation capacity till 2025. And you can see here, natural gas is responsible for 56% of the energy produced in the Nile Basin. And you can see here 29% of the energy in the Nile Basin is produced from hydropower. So here, this orange color is very important for us to understand. So the more hydropower produced in the Nile Basin, the more conflict you might have in the future. So you need to make sure that the future is not expanding in terms of this percentage. So this 29%, in my opinion, has to stay as it is and minimally expand unless there is a common understanding between all the Nile Basin countries how and where to generate hydropower. And I think Egypt was never against generating hydropower. So even now, as we speak, Egypt is building a dam for Tanzania in order to generate hydropower. So Egyptian company is building the dam. So there is no issue, but there should be an agreement between the countries to use hydropower, to use water for hydropower in order to be a kind of win-win. So we need to focus on other sources. We have to focus on the energy, for example, and this interrelationship between water, energy, and food is not only the factor, but climate change is another factor. If I take Egypt as an example for climate change, Egypt is affected by the climate change twice. One time inside the Egyptian borders, because increasing the temperature in Egypt will make everyone consume more water, will make the farmers consume more water because irrigation will require more water. The companies, the household, every one of us will be consuming more water. And this is what's happening inside the Egyptian border like any other country, but also changing the climate or climate change in the Nile Basin countries will affect the amount of water reaching Egypt from the river, because as I said, we are the last country in the system. So whatever happening in the upstream is going to impact us. So we are paying the bill twice for the climate change. One time inside our borders, and the second time in the Nile Basin countries, whatever changes is going to happen hydrologically is going to affect us in the future. So I'm going to skip some of slides, but Dr. Ola should just give me a signal when I have to stop. Sorry?
It's very interesting. We're captivated by your talk.
Okay. So a little bit about the dam systems in the Nile Basin countries. Here you can see we have the High Aswan Dam, we have the Sudanese dams. I'm speaking only here about the Eastern Nile Basin, because to speak about the entire basin, there are many other dams that can be included. But here there is a dam is being built in Ethiopia, and we have to coordinate these dams together. You cannot unilaterally try to coordinate any of these dams. There's one system that has to be coordinated and it has to be managed together. It's not my interest today to go into the details, but I just want to show you from the engineering perspective that when you try to fill one dam, you are going to stop the water from flowing to the other dams. So these other dams will be affected. So if you add new dam to the system, then it has to fit. It has to be coordinated together. And especially in the case of drought, if you have dry years, then all these dams will be empty because there's no water coming from the rainfall or minimum water coming, and everyone is consuming water from the upstream of the dam, and there will be no water here. Imagine this is High Aswan Dam at the end, and the rainfall started coming here, and now you have 10 years of dry years, which happened before. 9 to 10 years it could happen every now and then the water starts coming. And what will happen in this case, everyone doesn't have water after 8 years of waiting. The water is coming here. Is this one is going to be filled first, and then after this one the second and the third and the fourth? And these guys in the High Aswan Dam, in this case, they waited 7, 8 years or 9 years or 10 years for the drought period, and then they have to wait another 7, 8 years for all these be filled, and then they will receive water if there is anything left. That's why you hear always about the dry years, and the drought period is the critical period of. Just want to give an overview about the impact of any project in the upstream that has to be coordinated. Why we always speak about hydropower? Yes, there's plenty of water happening here, the map on the bottom of the screen here, but here we have also plenty of sun. We should be moving from hydropower to solar energy. That would be beneficial for everyone. And also the technology is becoming cheaper with the time, and building dams are not, a lot of people are speaking about green energy from the hydropower. Yes, hydropower is a green energy, but at the same time, hydropower and building dams are having huge ecological impact on the downstream and also on the upstream. So it's not 100% green as we imagine. We should be really thinking of making use of the solar energy. And you can see here, this dark color shows the solar intensity, the solar radiation intensity. And you can see here, we are lucky compared to Europe, for example. The green color means nothing. You mean you have really very little amount of solar radiation. But you can see here, we have the best solar radiation, or the highest solar radiation on Earth in our region. So when I say region, means also the Eastern Nile Basin here. So Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, they are really enjoying it. So why not using more solar energy than hydropower? And this is kind of interrelationship between water, energy, and food. And the second point, and I will be ready to stop here if I'm asked to, there is plenty of water. I mean, Egypt is receiving 55 billion cubic meter, 55.5 billion cubic meter. We have 7,000 billion cubic meter available of rainfall in the 11 Nile Basin countries. Out of this 7,000, we have 1,660 billion cubic meter inside the Nile Basin, not even in the countries. Here in this colored area, we have 1,660 billion cubic meter of water. So we are discussing and fighting against only 2 to 3% of the water. What about the other 97% or 98% of the water? We should be collaborating in order to be working together. We have been developing many projects that can really lead to win-win collaboration. I can stop here or continue if.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sewilam. Yeah. This was very, very interesting, and it also gives rise to many, many questions. But we will move first to Doris's presentation, and then we'll get back to many more questions. Your floor, Doris.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sewilam, your presentation certainly established at the macro level the water footprint, which I think is a very nice segue into my presentation. in which I engage my students in a discussion regarding water literacy. Once again, I am so very happy, Dr. Sewilam, that you again provided a rather expansive macro level look at water resource management, the building of the Grand Renaissance Dam and the interconnectivities, if you will, and that involves the 11 countries that share this major water resource, and that Egypt, which is the last nation that is the recipient of the Nile, is 97% dependent, as you've noted, on the water. So what exactly do I engage my students in? I bring them more, I reference some of the macro level elements that you discussed, but I engage them in more of a micro level discussion. So at the macro level, I talk about the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And many of you may know that just less than 6 days ago, the world celebrated under the auspices of the United Nations Water Day, okay, which is a wonderful celebration that brings to the world's attention about our most precious and natural finite resource, which is water. And this agenda, 2030 agenda, grew out of certainly growing urban spaces. I mean, right here in Egypt, for example, the country is building over 20 new cities, and each of these cities are going to be greatly dependent on water. And this further ushers in discussions about sustainable development and how water can help to eradicate disease, and education for all. And certainly what is most important that connects all of these key points at the macro and micro level is good governance that is strategically linked to every nation having access to clean water resources. And that again speaks back, Dr. Sewilam, to that very nice visual that you showed, indicating all of the dams that are being constructed in various countries that share the Nile. So how do I further engage my students in a micro level discussion regarding water? So I first begin by engaging them in a survey. So I ask them simple questions such as, where does your water come from? Are any actions in your household being taken to conserve water? Do you know of any specific ways Egypt is combating its water crisis? Are you aware of the global water crisis? And what is your primary source of drinking water? Bottled water, tap water, water fountain? Invariably, the vast majority of the responses for the last question is, of course, bottled water. And students are often fascinated to learn that as we continue our discussions, that what exactly is water literacy? Why is it important at a micro level to understand where your water resources are coming from? So as we know, water literacy is our knowledge about the Earth's water sources. Where are these water resources? And again, as Dr. Sewilam has indicated, for Egypt and for the 10 remaining riparian nations that share the Nile, Egypt is dependent on 90%, 97% of its water from the Nile River. So water literacy, therefore, connects an understanding to water scarcity issues facing the planet and requires serious attention. As we know, we're looking at climate change and other factors that are impacting our natural water resource because the Earth is not making any new water. So the lack of knowledge around even basic water use dynamics and water movement affects what people might do or think they can do to improve water resource management and, of course, their overall health. So with these points in mind, I then proceed to ask my students, where do you think the vast majority of water is utilized in Egypt? Most think it's for domestic purposes, domestic uses, such as washing dishes, washing clothes, washing cars. My students are always surprised to find that the vast majority of water consumption in the country is used for agricultural purposes and, of course, industrialization. That how much water is used to grow 1 hectare of cotton, which is one of the country's most important exports. Okay, so this level of water literacy allows for the students to raise their consciousness about water consumption and how every drop of water is so very important for our short and long-term sustainability. So how do I further this micro level discussion regarding water resource management? Can everyone still see my screen?
No, we don't see it anymore.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Somehow I managed to switch off. Please forgive me there. Let me just make sure that I am sharing. Okay, all right. So how do I continue to engage my students in this micro level discussion regarding water? I use a case studies pedagogy. Certainly, much of the discussion is precipitated by the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, but I bring it back to the micro level uses here in Egypt. So how can water literacy education programs improve water usage and water management in Egypt? How can water literacy education programs work to foster behavioral change, such as conserving water, not wasting water? And what stories can be used by or created by those who run water-focused educational programs? And it is through this latter question that I have found some wonderful stories about water usage along the Nile, specifically in Aswan, or specifically in Upper Egypt, in this region of the country, how there's music and poetry, song and dance that is so committed to the important resource known as water. So when I bring the story about water literacy to this micro level, when I bring the story about water and its importance for short and long-term sustainability, students are able to see themselves as active participants in the process. That what can they do to help preserve water? What must be done at the individual level to help contribute to a national conversation in which Egypt is one, again, of 11 nations that's sharing one major water resource, which is the Nile. So my focus, again, is on water literacy and its overwhelming significance to our long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Doris. This was very useful and helpful and gives way to many, many questions. And you certainly shed light on some of the questions that I have for you and for Dr. Sewilam. But essentially, I'll come back to Dr. Sewilam to ask him, with everything that Doris said, do you think, given the rarity of water as an international challenge and a national challenge, what is the role of education in that respect, and in the primary and the advanced levels, at the level of the youth and the universities in Egypt? Because I remember that when I was a student, very little was said about the water and the Nile, and I'm hoping to hear that from Dr. Sewilam that the government is getting ready to prepare new programs and educational tools and awareness campaigns for the water right now.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Dr. Doris on the role of education and really helping, but not only at the level of university, but it should start from a very early stages. I would say from KG1, KG2, there should be a structured programs to be offered for kids at all the levels, I mean, through the school, so that when they come to university, they are ready to receive more type of complicated tasks about water. But when you have the students at the university, you really realize that there are a lot of issues. And I thank Doris for offering her students courses or contents about water, because we really lack that. So what I'm saying, we should start at a very early stage of the education system. And that was the main reason why in 2009 we started project about education for sustainable development. And this was a very big project that I started in Egypt, in schools in slum areas like Bula and El Warra and Bula at Dakrur in Giza Governorate, and started to introduce the concept of sustainable development for kids starting from grade 4, 5, 6. And then we went back after a couple of years after the success of the first phase to phase 2 of the project that we call it EduCamp, Education for Sustainable Development beyond the campus. So we said beyond the university campus, we are going outside to introduce this to the school. And you know, water is the key for sustainable development. We can't really keep talking about the SDGs without understanding the role of water. So water quantity and water quality are always important for achieving all the SDGs. So there is no agriculture and no ending the hunger without having water. There is no way to achieve this. There is no good health without having water. So this is the SDG 3. There is no good education without having water. We all know that kids, they don't go to school in Africa either because of harvesting water for the family or because there is no sewage in the school. So their girls are shying to. So there are a lot of interrelationships between the SDGs and the water sector. That's why water is a key to be understood in the school. And I think anyone is invited to visit the website of the EduCamp project to see what type of activities we have been working now for over 10 years in this project. And now it's not a project that we make fundraising for it. We are always offered money to continue the project and introduce it to other locations. We have kits for water, kits for energy that are available for teachers, and any teacher can contact me if he or she is interested even to have kit for free. Thank you.
This is wonderful. I hope you can share the link of the SDG website so that we can propagate it and render it more available. Can you tell us a bit about the awareness in terms of not wasting the water and the reuse of water for the general public in Egypt? Are there any awareness campaigns? Are the university students in the fields of media and graphic design and other sectors helping and participating in creating awareness campaigns for reuse and not wasting water?
Yeah, are you asking me or Dr. Doris?
I'm asking you.
Okay. So yeah, we do have. I talked already about our role in introducing it in a formal education, introducing kits that cope with the Egyptian curricula in public schools. But we have also the university programs. We have at the AUC the master program in sustainable development, which is open for any background because it's offered by 4 schools. It has concentration. It has engineering concentration. It has global health and global affairs and public policy concentration. It has business concentration. So any background can join us, and they get degree offered by 4 different AUC schools. These students are running campaigns. So these students, they have an exercise that's called community project. And most of these students, they run a project about raising awareness of water, going to the deserts, to remote areas, working in slum areas, educating kids in schools about the water and its relation to sustainable development. So we always promote. I have master students now doing their master thesis about this issue. So they always have activities here from CARES, which is our center inside the AUC, about campaign. So this is one program. The second program that's called Water Energy Food Nexus Technologies, and it's a professional certification that's also offered by our center inside the AUC. for professionals who would like to understand more about the water technologies, energy technologies, and food technologies and their integration. So we have also training offered for public. So we trained last year 700 young people on water use efficiency, as you mentioned. So there are a lot of our center cares, a lot of these efforts. And if you write cares in Facebook or in Google, AUC, you will land by our website. And I can put it here on the text if you are interested to see what type of activities we are offering related to water.
Thank you, Dr. Sewilam. I'd like to go back to Doris and ask, thank you. I'd like to ask you, what kind of challenges did you face to prepare your course, and particularly in the field of archival materials and literature and figures and data? And my
Very good question. That is an excellent question, Ola. From the standpoint of obtaining data about water literacy outside of Egypt, there is a plethora of scholarship. I was able to immediately yield to the United Nations and to a number of international organizations whose business is centered around developing water literacy pedagogy. So I did not experience any problems there. The challenge that I faced was finding actual data that speaks to the quantities of water that is being used at agricultural, industrial, and domestic levels in Egypt. I also faced a challenge in trying to find partners within Egypt, be it at the governmental level or with private entities within Egypt, to help me build a water communications program that would further expand the scope. And why was I interested in that? I found that during the first 2 years in teaching this course, the vast majority of my students were engineering majors. And this was wonderful. I would certainly have a few students from social sciences and the humanities, but the vast majority of the student population were students from various specializations in engineering. And that had its advantages to the extent that these students brought along with them a pedagogical expertise that allowed them to crunch data, to even look at raw data and make sense of it, to place it in their presentations. And they would often offer assistance to their teammates who may not be in engineering. I would always mix up the teams where I would not have all engineers in one group, for example. I would make it interdisciplinary so that the knowledge could be spread around, and each student representing their respective discipline could offer something from a humanities, social sciences, or pure engineering perspective with respect to the water nexus that Professor Sewilam has referred to repeatedly. But that area was my primary challenge in obtaining actual data within the country and to build relationships with partners here in Egypt. And now that I see all of the work that Dr. Sewilam is doing, perhaps maybe we can resume that conversation we had nearly 3 years ago to further build upon water communication in some fashion. Also, thanks to your office, Dr. Ola, we were able to locate photographs, a very nice collection of photos representing people along the Nile, especially in Upper Egypt, whose lives are so very dependent on the water in ways that can be described even more as living with the Nile than we actually see here in the urban space of Greater Cairo. So the Rare Books and Special Collections Library has actually contributed to photographs and other artifacts that help to tell the story about the significance of the Nile.
Well, thank you, Doris. I see some overlap between or potential cooperations between you and Dr. Sewilam in different areas. Your course is more introductory and covers of topics, and Dr. Sewilam has a lot of very focused topics. So it would be wonderful to see some cooperation between your two departments. I have a question for Dr. Sewilam. What is the way forward for Egypt, given all the data we have gathered and the situation of the water now with the challenges we are facing?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question. I think that's really very important one. Before answering it, I just want to tell Doris on the screen, I put you the water balance in Egypt. If I'm sure it's known, but these are the official balance where the Egyptian water goes, and so maybe we can help your students to because it took from me some time to find the right numbers and also make sure that they are official numbers. So I don't know whether they have them, but you can screenshot and use them. So yeah, coming to your point, what's the way forward? I think we have two ways. And we have to walk them in parallel. The first one is to work together with the Nile Basin countries to collaborate on the base of win-win collaboration. For example, water harvesting, which means there is a lot of water. I mean, when I speak about 1,660 billion cubic meters and reaching Egypt 55, it means that there is a lot of water lost on the way. I cannot imagine that all this amount was consumed by the other 10 countries, which is, we all know it's not true. Either water lost in the evaporation or lost through the rainfall and not harvested and not steered in a certain river. So we should really be collaborating together for harvesting this water or part of it, and then making use for the benefit of all the 11 countries. It's not only for the benefit of one country on the cost of the others. So this is one issue. And that's beyond the Egyptian borders. But inside Egypt, we should be working on further, because I say further, because I see the huge investment happening in Egypt now for enhancing the water use efficiency, further investing in water use efficiency, further investing in education, or specifically water education, and for the investment in water research. I know there are many huge mega projects are built now for, so now we have the biggest water treatment station globally. It's now in Egypt. And soon we will have the biggest water desalination unit. That's also becoming to be a fact very soon. But we want to invest in the research of water in order to own the know-how, because building the biggest whatsoever project based on imported know-how is very expensive. But once you have the know-how, you can continue building projects with your own know-how, so you can reduce the cost. And we need to do that. We need to own the desalination technologies, the know-how for that. We need to own the water treatment technologies. We know how to build them, but based on imported know-how. We want to have our know-how, and that will happen only if we have strong research and should be funded research. So I think this is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sewilam. I heard you talking about virtual water. So can you give us, can you shed light on that?
Yeah, virtual water, as I said, is the water included in a certain product. So when I tell you that this cup of coffee includes 140 liters, this is the water footprint. And this, with the water that was consumed, is not water that's inside this product now, but it was consumed throughout the supply chain. That's why we call it virtual water. It does not exist. And if you ask me, you need to see here on the screen, this balance is based also here. If you can see that we are consuming 55.5 from the River Nile, and from the groundwater 2.5, 1.3 from the rainfall, desalination, water resources is this amount, reuse 21. But we have above 100 million inhabitants in Egypt, and we only have all of these is 81 billion, which means that the water share per capita is, even after all this recycling and treatment, etc., is still below the 1,000 cubic meter per capita. If you ask me, between the 800 and the 1,000, from where we bring this is virtual water, but we import it from abroad in the form of food. We are the biggest importer of wheat. Wheat, if you calculate how many liters as a virtual water included in each kilogram of wheat, you will come up with the number missing here. Add to wheat, of course, the other products that we import. So what we import in the form of food is actually water, but it is a virtual water, not a physical water. So I hope the idea is clear.
Thank you. I go back to Doris. You said that you taught this course how many times, Doris?
For 3 years.
Lovely. So you have around at least 50 students who took this course.
Actually more, perhaps closer to 100.
How can we make use of them, since they've engaged in that course? They were actively involved. They came up with a lot of data and findings. Obviously, they were very interested because your classes are always very animated. Is there a way we make use of them to participate in the educamps, or to create more educamps on campus, for instance, in summer for younger students, for to expand the educamps that Dr. Sewilam talked about, and to cooperate together with them?
Sure, absolutely. I think what is most interesting on the graphic Dr. Sewilam just shared, I became quite intrigued by the percentage of rainwater that's being harvested. Some of my students, during the last semester I taught the course, was the year we experienced a major downpour of rain. You may recall, I think this was back in 2018, 2019, there was this flash torrential downpour of rain, which turned Route 90 literally into an ocean. I left campus at 7 p.m. on the bus. I did not arrive home to my flat in Mahdi until well after midnight. And so my engineering students became especially intrigued by witnessing climate change, and that the road architecture was not yet designed to accommodate this climate change. And I think just last year, the university received an email that the southern tip of Route 90 was undergoing architectural upgrades in order to accommodate the oncoming rainfall, because this year we experienced even more rainfall. So more to answering your question, my students, specifically from specializations in engineering, they would be very resourceful in creating educational posters or discussions where they are quite knowledgeable of how climate change is impacting how we are examining not only our uses of water, but what the city itself is doing in order to accommodate these climate changes and finding ways to harvest rain. If I might add very quickly, I lived in Tanzania for a short period of time, and this is an East African nation where there is literally a rainy season. And I was so very happy to see that Egypt and Tanzania are currently engaged in this major project to help Tanzania build its dam so that they can harvest the rainfall, because there is literally a rainy season. And I have often said one of the sounds that I miss so very much, having lived most of my life in the United States, is the sound of rain. But when I lived in Tanzania and the rainy season arrived, the first few weeks, oh, this is fantastic. Oh, the sound of the rain. And 2 months later, I was like, oh no, this is too much rain. But my working with Professor Mbete, who died a year ago, was very much involved in this Tanzania-Egypt project. And he basically stated that part of the educational process that is involved in helping citizens recognize the ecosystem, that we're all strategically linked to this very complex ecosystem, and that Tanzania was in need of building an engineering core, or a core of engineers who could help the nation harvest that rain in ways that would allow it to recycle it, to use it for agricultural, industrial purposes, and of course, to help cut back on one of the country's major health problems, which is malaria. This is a waterborne disease, as we know. So I feel rather confident that given the successes that my students achieved in my course, that they could actively be participants in helping to raise awareness and become active members in creating an educational environment that allows us to have a greater appreciation for the water nexus.
Wonderful. Since we're in a library, we will always welcome the research that they produced. So we would like to receive the research and render them available to other researchers, and make knowledge more common.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to Dr. Sewilam and ask him to for some closing notes about the renewable energy and the place of the Nile water in this research, and other efforts done in Egypt for renewable energy.
Yes, thank you. I think Egypt on the way of being a lead country in the region in the area of renewable energy, and I think there is the biggest global photovoltaic project that's happening now in Upper Egypt, in the near of Aswan, and I think you might have realized in the screen that I shared that this spot, this specific point in Egypt, has the highest solar radiation on Earth, which is really very attractive for the country to build such a mega project for photovoltaic. But I think it's not only photovoltaic. I think I can see also in the media. I'm not really involved. I have water background, but I overlap with energy definitely. And I can see signing memorandum of understanding for green hydrogen every now and then. So it seems also, which is a trend actually globally, people are moving to green hydrogen, and which is becoming now a very important hope for moving towards green energy. And I think there is a huge potential for thermal energy as well, but also there is a need for policy modification and policy adaptation in order to encourage people to move more and more into green energy. And we all see now the increase of fossil fuels, and I think this will give a good opportunity for renewable energy to be really helpful in terms of reducing the cost in the future. So I'm very optimistic about the future of renewable energy, not only in Egypt, but also in the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, Sewilam. I hope you and Doris will be with us in the opening of the exhibition of photographs on Wednesday.
Yes.
We believe culture is always going along with the changes that are happening. We hope that we find in contemporary pictures of Roger Ennis and the archival pictures of Margo Veillon an echo for everything we said today, and that we can move forward and keep benefiting from the changes that are happening globally and internationally, and everything works out for the best for Egypt. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Sewilam, for such an enriching participation, and to Doris for all your efforts, and and thank you.